edge goes, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written words. Happy headbutting, come join the herd.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the herd. We have lots of people hanging out and more coming in by the minute. So good to see everyone. This is a topic that has gotten a lot of interest on Twitter and elsewhere. I don't know if it's specifically the conversation that Vicky started about role-playing indies, or if it's that it got stirred up with the video game indie scandal, but either way, we will touch on all of the above as we go. As per normal, this is gonna we ended up a little out here. You know what? I'm gonna put you in order. So for intros, there we go. Ta-da. So we are gonna go clockwise. Just do a quick introduction for everyone that's here, just in case someone's been living under a rock and doesn't know who any of these fine people are. And then we will say hello to the chat, and then we will get down to it. Professor, we will start with you.
I'm Professor Dungeon Master from Dungeon Craft.
And how long have you been gaming? Do you have
years.
me beat?
40
oh,
years.
You do have me beat. You do have me beat. Not by much, but you do have me beat. That's unusual.
Probably more. Whenever 1981 was.
Math. I can't do math. So other than the game that shall not be named, what is your favorite role-playing game? What's your favorite indie game, since that's what we're talking about?
My own.
Well, yes.
I'm going to shamelessly self-promote my own game, Deathbringer, kickstarting in May or June.
Yes, I'm on the list to be notified.
But I love all indie games, and
okay.
I've been a big promoter of them.
Yes, I. It's one of the things I like most about your channel. Vicky, do you and Dean want to co-intro this, or do you want to go one at a time?
I think we can co-intro. So I'm Vicky from Evereye Games, the co-creator of Untold Destiny, and Dean.
And I'm Dean, the other creator of Untold Destiny. I think I've been gaming for 39 years now. Vicky, not so long. How long have you been gaming?
About 34 years. So not as long as you, but getting on a bit now.
All right, and Grim.
Hello, I'm Grim. I run Postmortem Studios, which is my own imprint. I've been working in the business about 26 years now, and I've been gaming for about 40 years again. Favorite indie? I think it would be unfair to pick one. I'm not as much of a shill as Professor DM.
You do have a favorite of your own, though, because we've discussed this.
I may have changed my mind since then. You'd have to remind me what I said.
You said Whitechester. Have you changed your mind since then?
I don't know. I can't remember what I said.
Whitechester. Is my sound going in and out?
It is a bit.
Oh, dear. Wow, we are just doomed to have sound issues tonight, aren't we? Don't forget, if somebody hits a telephone pole and I get booted offline, Grim's in charge.
Responsibility.
I know, we can't have that.
No.
Do we have a racer in the chat yet? Because we got people looking for links, and he's the link master normally. But I have not heard from him today.
It's been erased.
Only his head. Okay, so I don't know. Yeah, I guess he's not here yet. Legatus, is there any chance you can start digging up links for all these fine people and posting them in the chat? And speaking of the chat, Legatus is my other mod and was also the first person in the chat. Because Legatus is really part of the machine and does not, in fact, live outside the internet. I'm quite convinced. OGM is here. Welcome. Rachel is unable to watch tonight, but wanted to stop by and say hello. Rachel, friend of the channel, I hope you're doing well. Uncle Martin, LFG Legends, Driving in Dragons. Driving in Dragons being here reminds me that last week I forgot to change the chat to live chat from top chat and missed a whole bunch of stuff, which no one pointed out to me until later. As your GM, welcome. He was on a week or two ago. Time has kind of gone fuzzy since I haven't got much sleep in the last couple of weeks. Simon says, I thought I was late, but I'm 3 minutes early. And Simon is he runs your Discord, Grim? Is that the...
It helps on my Discord because I can't be asked. So responsibility shirking again, you see.
Also says, that Professor, that he's reached out to you before about Grim stuff. Would love for you to get in touch. Rio says, evening all, just passing by. We'll catch the replay tomorrow. And the Witch Queen. Hello. Witch Queen is a channel member. Thank you very much. Good to see you here. I haven't seen you in a few days. I hope things are going well. Lots of people who did the math for me, though interestingly I got multiple answers. So, and let's see, requests for links, which I hope we'll be working on. And yes, Simon, I can do that. Actually, I can, if I can figure out how to do it, I will just mod you, period. There you go. Ta-da! And welcome to Primeval. I think you are new here, so welcome to the herd. Good to have you. All right. OGGM says Whitechester is his favorite of your stuff. So
Fair enough.
So on to the topic. I think that's the fastest we've ever gotten through intros in the chat. So awesome. The definition of indie was a topic that Vicky brought up on Twitter 6 weeks ago-ish, something like that.
Yeah, about 6 or 8 weeks ago, yeah.
And it got lots of attention, and it was a wonderful conversation. But Twitter makes it very hard to, respond to everyone in a way that everybody can actually read well. And so I kind of wanted to do this anyway. And then there was this debacle with so-called small indie companies that were in fact taking millions of dollars from larger companies who saw the label of indie as a selling point, which was kind of what we started discussing in the first place. Oh, Eraser is here. Hello, Eraser. It sort of, caused kind of an outcry. And one of the things that had started the conversation was I said, I wonder what's going to happen when indie stops really meaning anything and just starts becoming a selling point. And I think the video game community immediately made my point for me. So I'm really glad we're getting to have this conversation in a method that is not, going to involve responses to one person that then doesn't show up for somebody else's and everything else. So I guess we'll start with just a basic, if you had to describe what an indie game is in like 2 sentences, what would it be?
A game not produced by a publicly traded company like Games Workshop or Hasbro, nor owned by a publicly traded company. No subsidiaries owned by. Once it's publicly traded, that is a corporation. That's a mega corporation to me. And then that means most role-playing games to me are indie.
Is there a middle ground? Because I mean, I think most people would say that Pathfinder is not an indie game, but it isn't a publicly traded company either.
I'll let everybody else answer that one. What do you think?
Well, it was kind of a general question, but yes.
Well, I personally feel that an indie is a game where the creators actually retain the full ownership and creative control. Now, I also agree with you around the publicly traded, but I also think the likes of Paizo, because of the way that they're actually designed, where you look at it, Paizo actually got set up off the back of having lots of money from when they had the stocks from Wizards of the Coast, and they actually were sort of a low risk entry point into the magazine environment, and that was their stepping stones into creating Pathfinder. Now, you will find the majority of indies, small companies, won't have those sort of entry points available to them and have to take far bigger risks. So this is where I think that indies, they actually take a personal risk to get a company going or to get their game launched. And I think the personal risk is very important. So not just a publicly traded company, but they also take their personal risk in getting that game to market.
So being an indie company and having another company give you $10 million to start your game
Yeah,
isn't really a
sort of
personal risk.
no, it's not really a personal risk. You take risk if you get given that money, because then you're on the hook, but that also means you will lose some creative control because somebody's given you that money.
Hmm. Driving and Dragon says, how much design is handled and driven by the original creator or owner and how much by employees? That's a really good point because Hasbro is not only publicly owned, but I doubt the original owner of Hasbro is writing any books recently. What do we think about that?
Yeah. I think we're already in the quagmire, really, because around this issue, because creator owned could be part of it, but you also get creator owned comics where they retain the rights, but they're published by Marvel, DC, one of the others, even though it's creator owned. That's always been a bone of contention between creators and the comic book companies. But that's an instance where something's creator owned, but it's not independent because it's associated with the publisher. Publicly traded would be good outside of a business of this sort of scale, I think. But there's a lot of mid-tier companies that are, actual companies with more than one full-time employee, and all these other aspects going on, which to me, in the role-playing field at least, takes them outside of indie. And I think much like in music, indie has also taken on a sort of a vibe, as well as strict definitions of what it means. So yeah, lots of people do put out independently created but very bland corporate product that seems to be sucking all the money out of out of crowdfunding at the moment. But they don't have the indie vibe. It's like if you talk about indie music in England, you're talking about a particular style of music, not the way in which it's created and distributed. And I think some of that applies here too.
So if somebody puts out a Morkborg supplement that doesn't have crazy writing so that the normies like me with terrible eyesight can actually read it, is that what you mean when you say like losing the vibe?
Yeah, if you put it out as a PowerPoint presentation, I don't think it would have the same impact.
What does everybody else think?
Dean?
Yes, I mulled this back and forth because, strictly speaking, Professor, you're absolutely right, which is if you're a publicly traded company, you're no longer independent. But it means the indie label means nothing in the TTRPG field because there are 4 companies that sit outside that. Everybody else is lumped into that. And then it becomes down to people's perceptions. If someone looks at Piezo, looks at Pathfinder, they may think, wow, that feels like another Wizards corporation. It's not, but it's that feeling, it's the vibe, it's the how big they appear, how much money they've got, how much marketing they've got. It's a very difficult, and this is why we kind of started the conversation. It's very difficult to pin down exactly what indie is because you've got 2 aspects. You've got the spirit of an indie, and then you got by the letter what an indie is. You know, its definition. And I think, for me, an independent is someone who has created their product and still has complete control of their product. They may have people assisting in the delivery of that product, that creation, but they call the shots. They don't have a board above them saying to them, you've got to pull in cost share, you've got to, look into these areas, you've got to expand into this market, so you've got to change your creation to suit this audience or this group that we're trying to get into or where we're planning to sell the IP. And I know it can be a common problem where a development company becomes quite successful, an independent developer gets a lot of money coming in, they need help to run their business, they start to employ people, and those people start to then say, at board level, start to say, oh, you got to start to do this or you got to start to do that. And that then impacts the creative process. For me, I think that's the core of it. An independent is someone who controls their creative process, controls not necessarily how it comes to market, but how it's built, how it's put together, and how it's presented. And they are the face of that creation. They may have people to help them. They may have a small team assisting them. They may outsource various aspects that they can't do, like art and music, if it's more of a multimedia thing. But when you think of the product, you think of a person or a couple of people. And for me, that feels more independent. Then when you think of a product, you think of a large company that's almost faceless.
That's sort of interesting because I think when you talk about like D&D, more people think of Matt Mercer than whoever is in fact in charge these days.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
And he doesn't even work for the company.
I know.
But yeah, that's a good point though, because I mean, originally, like people thought of Gary Gygax.
Yes.
With Shadow Dark, people think of Kelsey. Like you're right about that whole face of the company. So an interesting bit, I did a little of like, what does Google think, just for shits and giggles earlier. And I asked it about Pathfinder and I asked it about Call of Cthulhu. And it defined both of them as being a game company that supports other designers, considered to be a major company as far as role-playing goes and as far as monetary value goes. They're about the same. The IP has been used to develop other products, so board games, video games. The game itself is no longer creator-owned. They both have indie roots with scaled-up operations, and yet it defines Pathfinder as not being indie and does consider Call of Cthulhu to be indie.
I find that really interesting.
Huh?
I find that really interesting because.
Oh, so did I. I was blown right out of the water on that one.
When you look at Chaosium, they're actually a group because they're made up of Black Monk and Chaosium, and sort of assets go through one, and the games are owned, and all the IP is owned by one, and then it's promoted and written by the other. So it's all within sort of a group, and the IPs sit differently, and it's quite big. It's got 16 plus employees, and that's directly, and you start adding in all your freelancers and your contractors, you're talking a lot more. So I don't class them as indie.
You wouldn't classify either of them as indie.
Nope, I wouldn't class either Chaosium or Paizo as indie.
I think both of them were listed as having 50 or more employees. So, though the numbers are really, because they're not publicly traded, it's hard to get exact numbers on employees or finances. But the averages worked out about the same, I think.
So in the U.S., 50 employees is considered a small business. And when you think about a lot of people who are just sort of hobbyists in the hobby, they don't realize how small our hobby really is. And Wizards of the Coast is like 10 times the revenue of its closest competitor, which is Pathfinder. And then other companies are like, the next closest companies are like 10 times lower than that. I would say like Arcane Library, Shadow Dark, is probably 1/100th of the business of Wizards of the Coast. But it's so small compared to, say, video games, which is immense. That because people have asked, do you think that Darrington Press, like the Critical Role company, is it an indie company? To me, it is. They've got, what, 10 employees or whatever? They got 2 games. You know, sure, they've got the biggest
One.
show on, but it's still a small company.
1.5 games.
One. I was being generous.
So it did not consider Pathfinder to be a large corporate company the way it did Hasbro. It just said that it was considered too big to be indie. But I thought it was very strange that Call of Cthulhu was considered indie despite having... I wondered if it came back to that vibe thing you were talking about, that Call of Cthulhu is considered indie because it's so much more niche. There are lots of people who will play Pathfinder and Call of Cthulhu. Probably, but there are probably more people who are going to play, Pathfinder alone and not try Call of Cthulhu if they're not into horror.
If we're talking a bit about vibes here, maybe indie is where you have a smaller audience than someone else. There's less people playing potentially Call of Cthulhu than Pathfinder, so it considers Call of Cthulhu slightly more indie. I don't like that myself. There's some independent movies which have had huge numbers come out and see them, but they still remain very independent. The Blair Witch Project, I think, was one of the first ones I saw. Very low budget, incredibly indie, but had a massively popular reception. Maybe it's because when I did a bit of research, Paizo came out as the largest non-corporate TTRPG provider. And then it lumped a load of people like Chaosium, Free League, Cubicle 7, Modifus, Steve Jackson Games. Lumped a load of those people kind of in the mid-tier. And then there was everybody else below that. So maybe that's the kind of tiers that it was using. The big corporates at the top, Paizo, Pathfinder just behind, so kind of lumped it in with the top. Then this mid-tier, which could still be indie, and then the rest of the TTRPG space underneath.
Yeah. See, here's where I really struggle, because on one hand, I think having an actual indie label is important. I mean, it's like free range on eggs. Like, people really need to know exactly what that means. Because otherwise everyone just slaps the label on and it doesn't actually mean anything. It's a feel-good thing. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of saying that success makes a company not indie.
No.
If Shadow Dark gets too big but retains its current setup as it is it not indie just because it made too much money?
I'd say it's still indie.
It's indie. I see Shadow Dark and it's indie, isn't it?
The creator still has complete control over the creation. And for me, that's the core of what I believe in indie to be. The moment the creator is diluted or moved aside, or other people come in and take over the creation, how can you say that's independent anymore?
So what about all the supplements that get made for Shadow Dark that help make it more popular?
Aren't those
Is it-
supplements
is it-
made by other people?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that, like, if, I guess some of them are probably acting as employees, but some of them are probably jumping on the bandwagon, so to speak.
Are
I'm
they
curious.
published independently of? I'm trying to think of this. The company who
Yeah,
makes Shadow
Arcane
Dark.
Library.
Arcane
Arcane
Library.
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 Thank you. Thank you. Are they published independently or as part of Arcane Library?
Some of them
Independently.
are definitely, yeah, some of them
Independently,
are
in which
definitely
case
independent.
they're definitely independent.
Yeah.
It's like if someone creates a 5e product, they're not a corporate just because it's a 5e product. They're an independent because they're independently creating something that just
Well, this-
happens to use the 5e engine.
This is where I was actually going with that, because 5e they have official stuff made by Wizards of the Coast. They have completely unrelated, 5e compatible stuff. But then there's stuff that are made by independent producers but have the official backing and what's the word I'm looking for? Like they're
Franchising
officially,
is what they've
yeah,
been
they're
talking
officially
about.
like Wizards of the Coast officially is saying, well, we didn't write this, but we support this thing. So that's kind of what I was asking, was like if there were Shadow Dark stuff that was officially supported by Shadow Dark, but was not actually written by Kelsey. Like, at what point does that change?
So
If they were publishing through Arcane Library, then they stop being independent because Arcane Library can decide what they publish. This happened with Wizards, if you remember, when they started to change the OGL. They wanted more control over the products you created through 5e. And they wanted to have a say as to what went in there. They backed away from it when everybody went, no way. But if they had gone ahead with that, anybody creating a 5e product would have had to have put it through to Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast would have had to have vetted it and confirmed it to be according to their kind of standards, and then it would have been released. At that point, you're not an independent creator because you're creating through another company, and that company is vetting your creation.
That's why they had the two different licenses at the start, the purely OGL one and the more restrictive version, which they kind of brought in because of the Book of Erotic Fantasy.
Yeah.
So
Driving and Dragons is making a differentiation between an indie publisher and an indie game company. And I was kind of wondering, when you were talking about comic books, Image, I believe, lets all of the people that write for them retain the rights, but then publishes for them. So should there be a difference there?
I think that was the case when they started out. But then that's
Hey,
the creative.
leave me my nostalgia. For the very few comic books I've ever actually read, leave me my nostalgia.
But that's the differentiation between creator-owned and indie, because they weren't acting independently; they were acting as part of Image. It's just that they retained the rights to their own material.
Patty's Parlor says, is it a primary goal of people to become an indie designer and stay indie? Or is the better question, what is considered being a sellout? See, I would say that people who use the term indie just as a marketing term kind of is a sellout. Like that seems to me to be a selling out thing in and of itself. What does everybody else think?
It's a label. It's a label. Like, what's a micro brew beer? Is Sam Adams in the U.S. is that a micro brew? I mean,
No.
they're a fraction the size of Budweiser, but they're still huge. I think it's an advertising thing.
See, that's how I think about Pathfinder. It's not Wizards of the Coast, but it's
Yeah, we had a spate of this in the computer game market. Microsoft and their Xbox Game Studio bought out a load of smaller developers like Ninja Theory, Compulsion Games, In Exile, Obsidian Entertainment, and yet they peddled the independent label. In fact, with Microsoft's marketing machine behind them, they tried to capitalize on that independent label. And I know we've had some stuff recently. Tencent. Who was that? That was Wild Light Entertainment with Highguard coming to light. That Tencent had basically bankrolled them, and their marketing machine had pushed the idea that they were independent because it's two different markets. The TTRPG market is acting very differently from the computer game market, but within the computer side, independent is actually a good badge to have on your product. People will look at you with much kinder eyes. AAAs tend to be seen as money grabbing. They'll build content, then take it away and release it as DLC. So when someone sees an independent game come out, they will give it the time of day. It's slightly different in the TTRPG side. So this is where the big corporates like Microsoft will jump on. They'll buy the studios. They'll peddle that independent label just to get more sales. I think that is underhanded, and I think the people in the studios are, if they've had a choice, they, in my opinion, are selling out in that instance.
Professor Patty says your upcoming Deathbringer is using Shadow Dark as the bones, correct?
It is. It is. That's the engine.
I'm not sure exactly what his question was on that, but I think he typed something in like 3 different places, and it got broken up by everyone else's comments. So I'm still trying to find all of it. But he also said third-party stuff is independent. Some is endorsed by Kelsey in terms of whether you like them or not. So we talked a little bit about like the number of employees as kind of a guide as well. Considering how many companies run on freelancers, how does that figure in? I mean, if your company only has 5 people, well, let's say like Troll Lord Games, I think they only have 3 to 5 actual full-time staff members, but they have a lot of freelancers, and almost everything they have is written or drawn or laid out by freelancers.
And that's how Wizards used to do it as well. They had a big pool of freelancers they draw on for the majority of the sort of dog work on modules. So I don't know how you use that to differentiate, but permanent employees is at least something of a guide, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Well, except I feel like there are companies that are now going to freelancers just so that they don't have to pay benefits. And so, I mean, like, there's no possibility that Hasbro can't afford like full-time staff members, but they definitely use a lot of freelance artists just so that they don't have to do benefits or all the things that we have to worry about over here that you guys don't have to worry about there. And freelancing really, I had four contracts last year that did not pay me, which resulted in, severe issues. So I'm a little touchy on the whole like freelance thing and people who are hiring freelancers only for the purpose of cutting corners. I don't like the fact that freelancers are not considered employees.
I think you have to also keep in mind that this is a hobby industry. And so there are a lot of people out there who are willing to work basically for free just for the joy of it, or to have their name in print, or, I published a thing for Dungeons and Dragons, look at me. I think that's going away a bit. People are getting the message that they ought to be paid for what they do, but it is a constant downward pressure on getting paid at all, as you've encountered.
Grim, isn't it a lot of the indie people who don't do the paying, though? Because I worked for TSR, and they always paid me, and a lot.
I worked for Wizards for a bit. They did pay, but it often took a very, very long time to get the money out of them.
Really?
Yeah, and for the artists, it was worse, apparently. At least, I used to visit a friend in a house share with a couple of artists who worked for Wizards, and they were always bitching that they weren't getting paid. Indies, I mean, you're always sort of chancing your arm when you work for someone new, but crowdfunding has also kind of distorted the market quite a bit. People are paying over the normal odds, and they're getting the money from the Kickstarters. So it's a bit more reliable, but I think people are getting unrealistic expectations at the same time from that. I'm all for paying people more, but you'll know margins in this industry are like razor thin.
Yeah, but that was kind of why I was trying to make the differentiation between, Hasbro, who could definitely afford to be giving people full-time status if they so chose.
I mean, you look at Dean and I, there's the two of us. I have a full-time job on top of what we do for Ever Games. And because both of us are rubbish at drawing, I mean rubbish, we hire freelance artists. And I have to say, we're really lucky. We've had some superb freelance artists, but we have a rule: we pay on time. We've got, and it's our savings. But none of this has come from anywhere else. It's our
Excellent. Can I work for you guys?
It's. I've been a contractor, just like you, Eclectic Go. I've been a contractor, and I've also had a contract where we ended up, the company I was working for went under, and out of all of the money they owed me, we got £34 from the when it all went through insolvency. So I absolutely understand that pressure, and I wouldn't want to put my artists in that same situation. And it's something that Dean and I are very passionate about, is we get the art, we pay the artist, and we're typically 24-hour to 48-hour turnaround, and that's our rules.
We've
People
had
like
some.
you are glorious.
Yeah, we've had some great artists. One of the early artists I used on the science fiction version of Untold Destiny for some conceptual art pieces. He worked for some software development companies doing computer games, and they were the worst to pay him. And these are not fringe game companies. These are quite mid to high tier. And he said they would often be, no, you're going to do this and you're going to do it for exposure, or you're going to do it to our rates. And they would demand a lot of work, but very low rates. With an independent, I think the risk you take is that they just don't get the money and they can't afford to pay you. With the bigger corporations, especially nowadays, the risk you take is they're so big, they don't want to pay you. And you then have to fight to get paid, because they're all about the bottom line. They're all about making that profit, because they're profit driven, not creative driven. So they see you as a cost to them making a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. I had a company once that owed me about $3,500, and I had to threaten to sue them in order to get paid, because they were like, well, we'll pay you eventually.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I have bills that are due now. So, another Jay says, indie is real and also fake marketing like video games. Yeah, I think this is a really good point in that, yes, for a long time, well, I mean, honestly, even now, to go back to my egg analogy, cage-free really is just marketing. It just literally means they're not in a cage. They're still crammed together in a giant tent and not allowed outside. But there are people who are literally doing free-range chickens that are really cage-free. But it's really hard to know who's who because there's not a clear definition other than they're not literally in a cage.
So when they say all natural ingredients, so, okay, mercury occurs naturally. Doesn't mean it's good for you. I'm not about to eat that. But when you say
arsenic is
when
my
you
favorite on that one.
when you say indie in whatever sphere, I do think it conjures up an image which relates to this point. Like if you say indie music, I'm going to show my age here, but I think back to like Happy Mondays and the Charlatans,
Yeah.
maybe the Smiths if you go back a bit further, but Morrissey's out of favour, of course. If you say indie about role-playing games, I tend to think of rules light, story games, pamphlet-sized games, high concept, often pretentious sort of ideas. That's the image that it conjures up, and I think that's true of music, comics, role-playing games, whatever. Every indie scene has a kind of implicit vibe that you pick up on.
Normally being very, very poor.
Yeah.
Well,
Like
it's sort of like
85%.
the Markiplier movie there. Shoestring budget. He did have a huge following otherwise, but like Vicky was saying, he still took a real personal risk by investing all of his own money into that movie. And I mean, it paid off. And this is where I get really uncomfortable with saying, well, it paid off, so that's somehow different from a company that failed. Location was the other thing I wanted to ask about. So by US standards, what was the movie? Godzilla Minus One was considered to be an indie movie because it had a very tiny budget and the company was quite small. But by Japanese standards, apparently the pay and the company and the budget were all quite large. So was it truly an indie company? Was it truly an indie movie?
Yeah, I had a look at the definition of independent when it came to films, and I was referred to the fact that if it's created outside of the main Hollywood studios, it's independent. So that means anything created anywhere else in the world is an independent movie, according to a very Hollywood-centric view on what independent is. So I think it kind of fell into the indie label. I would imagine in Japan it probably wouldn't. They wouldn't have thought it was independent if it was one of their biggest film studios. But outside of Japan, yeah.
And that's like taking all of the Bollywood stuff from India and saying that all of that would be indie. And I'm quite sure in India it would not be classed as indie.
Well, I guess that's saying anything outside of Hollywood is indie is a little bit like saying all games that aren't Hasbro are indie. So
We're almost there.
I do want to thank Goofus the Doofus for your donation. Lovely panel. Thank you for taking the time to explore the nuances. Quite informative. I appreciate your support. As always, you have been wonderful for this channel, and we really appreciate you. And the Dapper DM says, pretentious game mechanics sounds like Grimm's bread and butter. You have fans.
Yes. He knows how to needle me. So.
Is it a gradient? Are there levels of indie at all, depending on how big you've gotten, how successful you've gotten? Again, I'm really uncomfortable with the idea of saying something is successful. Actually, let me rephrase the question. Vicky, you made a comment about taking a personal risk.
Yeah.
So Brandon Sanderson, who already makes a ridiculous amount of money, apparently, I don't know if he licensed the IP or if he wrote it or what the deal is, but there is a Way of Kings role-playing game now. I unfortunately am a little slim on details, but if he's the one who put it out, which I think was my automatic assumption, but not necessarily true, is that him really taking a risk when he's already very financially stable?
It's like everything, risk is a variance, isn't it? So he's taken his personal money. Has he had creative control on how that game is formed, right? If he's sort of piled all of his sort of lore and everything into the books and into the TTRPG, if he's had absolute control over that and he's put his money into it, and it may or may not be successful, then that's a personal risk. Now, there's a big difference between him doing that and him going, oh, Bob, in this company over here, could you write me a TTRPG and I'll pay you for it? It's a different level of risk, isn't it? So it depends where on that scale that risk falls. If he's sort of ploughing his money in and he's doing all the work, or he's got a few people helping him here and there, then that's a different level of risk to just outsourcing it fully to a company who's going to do the design and everything for him. I'm quite sure we've all worked on games in this panel, and we all know what it's like to have a look at how the numbers work, how it all balances together, and how it flows. If they haven't put that amount of effort in and they've just given it to Bob, who works for this company, then I'd say they're not indie. If they've actually looked at that and designed the mechanics, looked at the setting and done that themselves, yes, they might have outsourced to some artwork and some layout help and some editing help, then yeah, then that's indie. That would be my view.
Okay, so financial risk on its own is not enough.
No, I don't think it's enough on its own, because my risk might be say about 10,000-20,000 that we might plow into artwork, and that to us is humongous. That's our life savings. But to someone who's earned an awful lot of money, well, to them that equivalent might be sort of 100,000. But to them, it's the same level of risk that we're taking, because we're all different on the different financial scales of things. So how can I say what's a massive risk for him versus what's a massive risk for us?
See, I would consider the risk being trusting my crap to someone else. I would have a very hard time trusting my ideas to it.
There's a reason that we've developed our own, and it's not good. And we focus very much. We couldn't let go of it, could we, Dean?
No, we couldn't. No.
No.
What about the other way around then? Because there are companies like Modiphius or like Mongoose, used to be even more than they are now, where they just grab properties and put out games for them. That's kind of being a little bit mean to Modiphius by putting it that way, but they are basically IP churns. You know, they buy a property, they put out stuff for that property. It's not their own idea, it's their own system given a lick of paint each time and put on something new. So are they really independent? Some of their games are in-house, but most is this IP churn.
Yeah, I think you're starting to breach the sort of realms of indie at that point, aren't you? You're more of an IP. You're the equivalent of someone who buys up companies and resells them.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. The only independent creation that's gone in there is the numbers. The IP, the lore, the setting is all borrowed from someone else. And yeah, the Star Wars roleplay game, it may be a great game, but the people or the person who created it, are they truly independent when it's someone else's world, someone else's creation, they're putting a system to it? Do you know what? I'm actually on the fence on that one, because if you say they're not independent, then anybody who creates 5e content isn't independent, because they're borrowing off wizards. and repackaging it and putting it out. They're
Okay,
adding
so
their flair to it.
I have strong feelings about this one. I would say that they are an indie designer, but that their game is not indie.
Star Wars is an
Because
interesting Star Wars is an interesting one because back in the days of D6 Star Wars and the expanded universe, the D6 Star Wars books were used to bulk out the expanded universe, and they were at least semi-canonized at the time. So back then it was kind of back and forth. Since Disney, of course, no, but
I missed that. Sorry. Yeah.
I have someone we could ask. Tales of Gore, the role-playing game, right?
yes,
Which I have, Grim. So you wrote that, are you indie? It's an IP.
I'm indie. Is that indie though? That particular product.
Yeah, you get the last word on this because you're in that situation.
I used a modified version of the D6 system, so it wasn't my own system. The intellectual property involved wasn't my own. I hired an outside artist, Michael Manning, very famous fetish artist, to do the art for the books. I had to negotiate with Mr. Norman's agent, which has gone through 3 incarnations since, which is a headache. So, I mean, my input was deciding what was important, modifying the system, reading every single book and extracting the important information and presenting it in a gameable way. But I would be inclined to say that even though I'm an indie publisher and an indie designer, that's not an independent game because I didn't have creative control fully over it. So I would say, due to all the legal shenanigans and the importance when you're in that position of taking the responsibility to present someone else's intellectual property the right way, I think that all eats away at your independence. But that was an IP that was important to me, as you will have read in the front of the book. So I was happy not to be completely independent in that case. So I'd say it's mostly not indie.
All right, that's the answer then.
There you go.
That's the answer.
Amazing Game Pro says, is Eric July and Ripaverse indie since he had a huge fan base before he created his comic company? I think the same would have to be asked of Markiplier and his movie if we're going to do that. I don't think anyone is.
I'd say he's independent.
Yeah.
Like I have a decent sized YouTube channel. I'm independent. Like my games are mine. That's just the world we live in, where if you happen to be on YouTube, yeah, you could use it as a springboard. But I have to compete against things like Modifius or Free League that does buy IPs, right? So if I'm competing against Conan and Alien and all that stuff. So yeah.
So a lot of the chat seems to think that he started out as indie but is not now because he has creative directors and.
Is he publicly traded? We come back to that full circle.
He is not.
Nope.
But maybe he's independent, but the people working for him and publishing through him aren't. If that makes sense.
I think their argument is that he's doing more of the business running now and less of the creation.
That's like Todd McFarlane with Image Comics. But, people got to remember that, like, Stan Lee's run on Spider-Man was 3 years in the 60s. The Stan Lee, Ditko, Spider-Man. Then he went to the newspapers, so, he was in control of it, though.
You have a disagreement that your Gore game isn't indie. You designed the game, but you bought an IP.
Well, you're welcome to disagree.
I find it fascinating that the person who you would normally think of would be arguing they are indie is arguing they're not. OGGM says fanbase has nothing to do with, whoops, chat jumped up on me, with indie or not indie. Yeah, because I mean, I would say that, like, a lot of people that make successful products are able to do so because they're able to get Kickstarter funding, or, you know, they have a previously existing following. It's almost hard to get anything out there in any way, shape, or form unless you have some kind of following ahead of time. Would that be fair?
100%.
Professor, you're not only have a decent sized YouTube channel, but you're still doing a Kickstarter in order to get funding. So it seems strange to say that large followings mean not indie.
Well, that's why it got kickstarted. I had a number of companies that wanted to release Deathbringer. Like, I was taken out to dinner by a number of companies because I have a large following. That's it. If I didn't have a large following, they wouldn't care.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like buying a company because they've got a big order book. They've got a big client base. That's it.
Yeah.
Professor DM, you're not independent. I remember when Mrs. DM had control over where you could craft.
She has control. She has control over everything. We just did our taxes. She is in control. We just made Dungeon Craft a company, and she is 50% of the company. So she is half of it.
That's an interesting thing too, because you talked about if it's not publicly traded, if it's like a limited liability corporation,
which it is, yeah.
I was trying to decide whether or not that's a thing over in Europe because I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a company. So Override Games is set up as a company. And that's the thing. You can't say shares because immediately you have to, when you create a company, you have to allocate the volume of shares. And then, so for example, Dean will have a share and I may have a share, which is a whole 2 shares. It's not publicly traded. We own it. And that's exactly what you've done, isn't it, Professor Sir? Basically got 2 shares. Unless you've done 50 million shares and you're about to float them on the stock market, and we're all going to have a bit of insider trading.
So when's your company going live again?
And I operate as a sole trader, an independent. So we've covered the full spread in the conversation, from publicly traded to LLC to
limited. Yeah.
Just to
solo.
Amazing Game Pro is saying that they think Ripa has become quite the conversation in the chat now. Is he still independent because he controls his comics? It's interesting because I'm not sure, like, just printing a comic for someone else automatically makes them not indie, because I think most companies don't print their own books, correct?
Yeah, Trollord's the exception there, I think. Is Andy Warhol an artist, or was Andy Warhol an artist? It becomes the question then, because he got other people to do his paintings and his prints, but it was his idea, and so, you know, where's the line here?
And he called it The Factory.
Exactly. So that was his art, really, to me, is this, look, I have commodified art, I don't do anything, but it's in my name and that gives it worth. That's kind of the point. I mean, it's old hat now, but it was revolutionary at the time, but he didn't really do much.
Yes.
So is it sort of like the fact that Edison's real genius wasn't invention, it was patents?
Theft. Is it?
The ability to patent stuff faster than other people.
Yeah.
His genius was paperwork.
A keen sense of administration.
So somebody said that they thought Ripa started indie but isn't now. And we've discussed a little bit about the fact that once you stop having control over your own stuff, are there any other defining things about when you stop being indie? If Kelsey is always writing the majority of Shadow Dark stuff,
I think
there
it's a
other-
matter. I think it's more than that. I think it's how much revenue you're producing. You know, so she could. I mean, she could hire a bunch of people to do a Shadow Dark book, but as long as she gets the final say, and while Shadow Dark is wildly successful in terms of Kickstarters, like I'd love to be that successful. Like that would change my whole life. But it's a microscopic sliver of what Wizards of the Coast does. And same thing with Paizo. And I looked up the numbers on Chaosium too. Essentially, Chaosium does about $26 million in revenue a year. Paizo does $86 million in revenue a year. So it's like 3 or 4 times. So each tier gets like 10 times smaller than the previous tier.
yeah. Goofus, should I transfer that donation to him for changing his hat? apparently there were strong feelings about Grimm's hat. Grim, change your hat. You look like a truck driver moonlighting as a wizard. No disrespect to truck drivers
Yes.
or wizards. Thank you very much. Another, I would like to address your comment, except I suspect that whatever you're referencing is not something I understand. I don't know what Publix supermarket is, so you'll have to use a more general terminology that more of us get.
That's a chain in the South, right? Publix?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a chain. It's a chain in the South, Publix.
So it's our Hannaford or Shaw's or whatever. Thank you to OGGM. Like, share, subscribe to all the wonderful people in chat. Yes. Wormy Spoon says there has to be some monetary threshold. Now, is that monetary threshold as in how much money something makes? If Dean and Vicky win the lottery tomorrow, does that make them not indie all of a sudden? Or is it only if they suddenly, win the lottery because their game goes viral and everyone buys a copy?
I would say it's the source of the money. If someone creates something and they are incredibly successful and they retain control of that, I don't care how successful they are, they're still independent. If they start to expand and they start to move into other areas, at that point, if someone else is now creating their creation and they've got teams knocking out product, then you got the question of them not retaining their indie title. I don't think
moved into being their own corporate, isn't it? It's when do they start turning into a corporate? I would never rob sort of the Arcane Library's success from them just because they've been successful on their Kickstarter and they've done a really good job. Does not mean that they're not indie. If Professor DM goes viral with his, if Richard Witter gets his Ruttigers up and running, and when he goes into his Kickstarter around in a few months' time, if all of those are successful, at no point do they stop being indie just because they've been successful. at the point where Professor DM goes and hires 50 writers, just basically sits back with a martini and just watches them go off and do everything, and then goes, "Woohoo! Here's my name." Then I might be saying you're moving more corporate, but that's the sort of differential I put on it.
Though I suspect from earlier comments, microbrews might be more his cup of tea.
Okay, Mrs. Professor DM is there with her martini.
Publix is the #1 grocery store in Florida. It is the second largest employer, also not publicly traded. I would say, though, that there is probably not one or two people at the top of the chain that are making all of the decisions for all of the things. And I think we've pretty clearly defined that as needing to be included. Have we? Or
I think-
Professor, are you still a holdout on this one? That
I was just reading Patty's Parlor's comment, Martini and Bond films. Oh, this guy really watches a lot of my channel. He knows I'm a Bond film. I'm a James Bond nut. I got an Omega diver on my James Bond watch on now. At a certain point, it is a matter of money at a certain point. But again, role-playing games are so small. It's just incredible. Like, video games are the most. Then you have movies. Then you have board games. Then you have role-playing games. It's such a tiny, tiny industry. It just seems
it's bizarre
big
that
to
we've
us.
gotten to the. It's bizarre that we've gotten to the point that video games are outshining movies.
Oh, by a wide margin.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not
Yeah.
even close. Not even close.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, the video game industry is way bigger than Hollywood. It's way bigger. Makes way more revenue.
I think
That's why
money
we
is
need
a factor.
TTRPGs to it. Sorry.
That's I talked over you. You go ahead.
I think that's why you've got certain areas trying to move more towards a computer game model, and that's the whole reason they're doing it, is because they've seen how successful video games are above so much else. That's exactly why they're doing what they're doing in the market.
I ran a.
yeah. So sorry.
I ran a-
It's the always on DLC, selling cosmetics, selling skins, stuff like that, and that's why Wizards wanted the VTT. They wanted subscriptions. They wanted all of that because that is the biggest growth when it comes to entertainment.
I ran a game this weekend for people that had not role played at all, and they really struggled with how different it was. Like, they really wanted it to be a video game. Like, they were really trying to pigeonhole the system into how video games would work. At some level, when the product makes substantial returns, you can't remain indie. You have too many people that become necessarily involved. Didn't White Wolf get into this originally? They promised so many products, and they just didn't have enough people and enough time and enough anything else, and they just couldn't get stuff put out fast enough. Do I remember this correctly?
I think there was a point when it got to that. Yeah, they just couldn't grow fast enough to keep up with demand, and quality and so on started to slip a bit. I'm going on memory here because I used to be involved in the LARP Society, and that was pretty entangled with White Wolf at the time. I agree with Wormy's point just back then, though. I think money isn't the be-all and end-all, but it's certainly a factor, because as you get more and more money and you get more and more orders and you have to spin more plates, it gets out of hand. So you have to bring other people in order to cope, and then it kind of creepingly corporatizes you, which is why I deliberately alienate swathes of my audience every so often.
Hanayama-san says, as long as you're able to operate autonomously without influence of a corporation, then you are independent. I think this is where the argument on video games came in, because the argument was, well, just because we got $10 million from this other company doesn't mean we're not indie. But what corporation is ever going to just hand out $10 million without strings attached? They want those they want those investments returned. And I really struggle with the idea that any company receiving that much money, I mean, even a bank, like you take out a loan from a bank for a business, the bank's going to say, you need to do these things so that we can increase the chance we're going to get our money back. And another video game developer who basically is in direct competition with you it seems like, I don't know, I can't see a way for that to happen. What do you guys think?
I think even if on paper, they say they're just giving you the money, they're never just giving you the money. But then I think there's nuance here too, because if you crowdfund, all right, it's not one big company giving you, I don't know, $10,000 or whatever. It's a whole bunch of people, but that whole bunch of people still have expectations, and they apply pressure to you, and they have demands. They want their product in a timely fashion and up to the quality that they're expecting. So even if you diffuse out where you're getting your funding from, there's to an extent it's pressure, and you're not quite as independent as you might otherwise be. But then the big loan is more formal and probably more impactful, but I can't pinpoint where the split between the two really is.
Honey Amazon says he disagrees that profit makes you not indie. I think we have determined that we also agree with that. I don't think there's. I think other than like once you get to the point where you have to become a corporation just to keep things organized, I think the agreement is that money alone is not. Did we definitely settle on that? Money alone, being successful alone is not enough to. I mean, Tainted Grail is still an indie video game and has become probably more popular than a lot of the AAA games out there right now. And I would say that Shadow Dark is probably, I don't know, you think Shadow Dark's going to surpass like Chaosium at least? They had record numbers on their last Kickstarter. Just a random thought.
I think now it's developing its own identity, rather than just being a rule set. I think there's a good chance that it'll pick up. Yeah, I'd give them good odds.
D&D, you will own nothing and you will game happy. That's a great line. Someone should make a mock parody Wizards of the Coast t-shirt for that.
I think it's very difficult to say, Goat, how Shadow Dark, how big it could get. One of the reasons I went with Deathbringer being compatible with that game, because I think different versions of Dungeons & Dragons, they're very much like languages. They're different dialects of the same language. And one of the reasons I went with Shadow Dark is I just wanted my stat block to look familiar. Like, I had to go one way or another. And I have watched other people have coined this term, the Borgification of Shadow Dark, right? Like, so there was one Mirk Borg game, and then now it's Pirate Borg and Cyborg and all these Borgs, just like, it just exponentially grows. So I'm helping do that with Shadow Dark. So it could get where it's that big, and I wish her luck. She's a nice person. Chaosium has, there's heritage there. There's heritage and a long-standing. So many people came to H.P. Lovecraft's writing, I think, from the Call of Cthulhu game now for the last 40 years.
Yeah, I want to make it very clear that I don't mean that, like, if you're not an indie game, or if you grow out of being indie, that's a terrible thing. Just because, I have, the company that shall not be named, does not mean that I think that, if Shadow Dark or if you consider Pathfinder or Chaosium to not be indie, that doesn't mean they're not good games. I think I think the difference between just a game that is not indie versus a game I begin having issues with is when it basically becomes fast food. It becomes flat. It becomes like trying to appeal to the masses. It's trying to be everything for everyone, instead of having its own voice and its own, what was the word you used, Grim? Vibe.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Wizards of the Coast has really kind of lost it, is that it's trying to appeal to everyone and it doesn't really taste good to anyone. But it's still super popular because it fills the hole and everybody's used to it and we all grew up on it.
People still go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what the analogy I was getting at, is that, like, no one thinks McDonald's is good, but everybody eats it. Except me.
No, I go to an indie burger place. It's much better.
I actually I said that, and then immediately I was like, actually, I haven't eaten McDonald's since like 2000. So.
Absolutely haven't.
But yeah, I mean, I think once it gets to the point, like Amazon has become like, the shop that's everything for everyone all the time. And everyone goes there, even though everyone like hates everything they do. We know they treat their employees terribly. We know that their stuff's all junk, but it's just the thing everybody does.
Well,
Give
they
me
won't have
convenience.
employees. They won't have employees for long. That's going to go robot. The first thing that's going to go robot.
Simon says, "How dare you be successful?"
We have a big new robotic warehouse in the town near to me, and it was only open a few weeks before it burnt down. So we were joking that even the robots don't want to work there.
World Shaper says, "Trying to be everything for everyone, you mean like my game?" See, no, I would disagree. I have played your game, and your game has a very distinctive feel. Yes, you can do a lot with it, but it definitely has its own voice, and it definitely, I would say it isn't for everyone. It's just, I mean, it's kind of GURPSy in that sense. GURPS does a lot of stuff, but you're only going to use certain supplements, and it's all GURPS things are definitively GURPS things. Despite the fact that they proceed to take IPs from everything else, it still somehow ends up becoming very GURPS. Let's see, what else did I have for questions? There is a big thing on indie. Somebody was talking earlier about pay rates and the fact that the margins are very thin, but everybody kind of wants to pay fairly. I worked with someone once who hired their artist from another country because the economy was different and they could pay them significantly less.
Was the art of the quality that they were looking for?
I would assume so. I didn't see it, but I just
In
remember
which
that they
case-
said that.
Yeah, they're making a good business decision then. If they're compromising on their art and just going to someone who's cheaper, but not necessarily what they want or the quality that they're looking for, then yeah, it's a bad move. But if you're, I mean, the way we work, we find the artists, we find out what their rates are. We go through a two-step kind of process. One, is the art what we're looking for? Yeah, brilliant. What are your rates? Are your rates in the ballpark that we're willing to pay? And if you're not, if you're too expensive, then, thank you very much, but we can't afford you. But if you fall within our rates, we're then, yep, let's do business. Now, some artists will fall in our rates purely because they are in an area of the world where their cost of living is lower than ours. Their economy is lower than ours. So, our currency carries more bang and is worth more in their country. And I don't see that there's anything wrong with that, so long as you pay fairly and you get what you're looking for.
Well, I think the
Yeah.
reason I'm asking is that there was a discussion earlier about when the money comes before the vision. And these people made it very clear that they had narrowed down specifically for the money first.
Yeah. Then
Is there
your
difference?
product, yeah, your product's going to suffer. You're not going to get the quality that you would normally, because you're going cheap, and you're going cheap without adherence to the quality and making sure you get the artwork that your product needs.
There's a bunch of problems hiring artists these days. Maybe if you'll let me, I'll go on about that for a minute in a sec. But I'm just curious, Professor DM, you've been working on your big project for a while. How have you approached going after artists, and have you run into any problems?
No, because that's why I partnered with Roll for Combat, because they're a company that's done this before and they have a stable of artists that they work with. And I just wanted to be, I'm focused on making the game and the rules cool. Like, the art, I don't handle that.
Yeah. So I'm an art school dropout. All the best people are. I think that's been useful, giving me a grounding in visual representation and art styles and so on. So I usually have a pretty strong vision of what I want. But finding artists has become incredibly difficult, because what I used to do was open calls, because I was looking for people who needed the money, who I could up their profile, so I could sell off my conscience about the fact that I couldn't pay them a lot by the fact that I could help them out. Not exposure, but genuinely helping them out, like art students helping pay their way through university, that sort of thing. But these days, you do an open call for art and you get flooded with scammers and people misrepresenting art as their own, which isn't. Hooray for Google reverse image search. Or more recently, people trying to pass off AI art as their own when it isn't. So it's become incredibly difficult for me to find artists who I'm happy to employ at the kind of rates that I'm able to pay, without having to be paranoid and suspicious all the time. Even my Discord channel keeps getting invaded by scammers trying to sell their art. It's a total quagmire, to the point where it's put me off going for it. I have had instances where, before all of these problems, artists from poorer countries have approached me. I had a good artist from Indonesia that I used for a little while. But I made sure I paid them at least basic Western rate, because I'm a terrible businessman. But that just felt like the right thing to do for me. And the RPG industry does not pay well anyway for writing or art or anything else. It's minuscule compared to any other form of indie publishing or design or indie computer games, even if you never get paid. So it's a minefield. It's really difficult. I think people need to appreciate that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do. I mean, we hire, we've got artists from the UK, we've got artists from Brazil, we've got artists from the US, I believe, and Slovenia. So you look at all these different places, but we make sure that they all get a decent. It's why I'm skint. And I have no money. But we try and make sure that we are fair, and we're very lucky. We've had some amazing artists working with us, and we aim to keep that going. And some of the artists that are a bit more expensive, we can't engage as often as the ones that are then a little bit sort of cheaper, but we can actually get more from them because we can actually put more of it into our books. So it is swings and roundabouts, But yeah, you're right, it's hard. And yes, I get spammed constantly as soon as people realize I hire artists,
Yeah.
and it is annoying.
I will say it is a worthwhile investment to pay people on time, or
Yes.
once you've got an established relationship, a certain advance perhaps.
Yeah.
It's worth it in terms of the goodwill that you get back from the writers and the artists, and they become a lot more willing to go the extra mile for you because you do actually pay, and they know that, and they can rely on you. It's just the best way to do business.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Paying in reasonable time is also helpful. The
Yes.
Yarn Witch says, is the standard then to search out the artist instead of putting out a general call for artists?
That's what I've done. I have actually trawled through finding artists, found one of the artists on X, where they've been putting artwork out. I've found another one from Facebook where I was trawling through art pages. I went to a local art school and basically looked at their stuff. And the other one, Dean, you found.
Yes.
Luke.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and I found that way I've got an idea of what I'm looking for and whether or not their style I think could adapt to what I'm looking for. So when I'm starting the conversation, I'm sort of halfway there. I don't tend to bring on artists that are just approaching me cold, because sometimes they basically send me portfolios and they're sending me what they think I want rather than letting me take a look and then basically going, actually, I think this style this artist can do the style I'm looking for. And some of the artwork that gets sent through sometimes isn't even close to what you're looking for. And then I don't like being horrible. Don't like that. Don't like this.
I
guessed.
step
I
in
just
and
can't
take
do
over
that.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I go, your
can't
art's
do
terrible. Get out.
that. I've never said that ever.
I haven't.
No, but I don't, because I know people have poured their heart into their stuff. A lot of the time. Though sometimes I do look at it and go, really? But I'm always honest, but I try not to be blunt, unlike my husband over there.
Book covers, I think, have become a big issue for people too. I mean, I know Tom Kane, who has been on this show many times, used to write for Steve Jackson Games, used to write for FAFSA, used to write for Ars Magica, and now then went to teaching. Interestingly, here's the wrap up. He was a professor in the UK, so that. But he is now writing fantasy books, and I asked him about his covers, and he works with an artist he really likes that does all his covers so that the style is the same. And he said he's never paid more than $60 to $120 for cover, I think. Whereas I've talked to other people that paid, $600 for cover. And I think Tom's covers were better, but
I'm surprised he gets that, but I guess if he's giving the same person regular work, he's getting a discount. So
I don't know if it's that or if it's just that we're really broke up here in the Northeast too. So
It's really interesting that someone would be like, you know what, I have to give up my dream of writing games. I want to make real money as a teacher. That just goes to show you. Like, for the audience out there that don't know what game designers and makers of games make as money, that is that's what some of them are thinking. That's why I went into teaching, so I could earn a living.
I think Tom did it as much because history was really his great love. So he wrote GURPS China, and then turned around and ended up turning that into 6 books on actual Chinese military history. So Oh, we have someone new. Welcome, Popper Knight. My wife does book cover design, but will offer payment plans if required. I get a lot of artists that ask, like, should I charge before or after? And I'm like, I don't do art. I don't know.
Mm.
I tend to not get paid until after I am done editing. But as I said, that resulted in my not getting paid at least 4 times last year. So it's yeah, it's tough. It's tough being a freelancer. It's tough being indie. You know, anytime you don't have the security. Do Hopper, Zephyr, Freya, Lily, or Houdini? He's even remembered the lamb's name. I think I mentioned it once. Have thoughts on the subject?
Bear.
No, they're just. Zephyr's cranky because I'm letting baby goats in the house. Hopper's cranky because I'm letting baby. Most of them are cranky because I'm letting baby goats in the house. Though Zephyr does appreciate the fact that they smell like milk. Thank you very much again, Goofus. Lots of people now looking for artists in the chat. I have gotten to the point where I keep a list of people that I know, or at least know of reasonably enough that I think, you know, they're definitely not going to rip anybody off. Because I get asked so frequently. Because, like you said, Grim, it's become such an issue for so many people.
I hate it now. I really do.
And it also takes time to build up that sort of rapport with your artists as well, so that they understand your vision and everything. And I must admit, it's something I love and I do actually enjoy, but it's nerve-wracking when you have a new artist.
Is the concern that they won't get stuff done on time, or
It's
that
just more
it
of a
won't be
fact.
good quality, or?
It just takes time to get that working relationship at the right level so that they understand what you're trying to convey and you can actually work together. It's like any working relationship, it takes a little bit of bedding in.
Professor, you mentioned that you were working with another company on your game. I was not familiar with. How does that work?
Well, Roll for Combat is the publisher, right? So ultimately, I wrote the manuscript and I've written it with other people, and they take it, they do the layout, the formatting, the art. Stephen Glicker, Roll for Combat, and he's done many Kickstarters, many books. Mark Seifter, Pathfinder 2, is his partner. He's going to be editing Deathbringer. So essentially, I have handed over a manuscript to them, and they will finalize it. But I don't know anything about art, layout, anything like that, and that's why I wanted to partner with people that knew that and could deliver something on time.
So instead of like Grim going out and finding an artist and finding an editor, well, you do your own layout, right, Grim?
Yeah, I do pretty much everything myself.
But instead of like going out and finding all these different people, you just partner with them and they kind of do the legwork for you, or have people on staff?
I'll outsource for editing. Sometimes I get people to write for me. I look for artists, but all the other stuff is me. The initial writing, the layout, all the dog work at the back end. If I could afford to, I'd hire someone to work for me and do all the shitty bits. But
we're with you. We're having to do it all ourselves. The only things that we really outsource is the artwork, and that's because our stick figures wouldn't go very far.
I mean, personally, I think the idea of an entire role-playing game that is illustrated in nothing but stick figures might, in and of itself, be different enough to get attention.
Maybe maybe it's not too late to get the Kingdom of Loathing license or something.
Yeah.
Once you have merch, are you still indie? Shadow Dark the breakfast cereal.
Hey, I've got t-shirts, all right? I'm still indie.
I keep saying I need a t-shirt because I am notorious on my gaming streams for forgetting to save and then going these huge distances and then dying. And since I play retro games, that means I'm going all the way back to the beginning. So I keep saying I need a t-shirt that says save early, save often. It's always sensible to pay someone that knows how to do something if you can't do a proper job of it yourself. Absolutely. The number of people that tell me I don't need an editor for my book, I can just do it, I laugh every time and say, okay, have fun with that.
It's
Because
not easy.
you cannot ever see your own mistakes. It's just
No.
kind of the rule of the game. I say quite regularly, so I edit fiction and I write nonfiction. My nonfiction is 2,500 words max. I write articles for magazines. And at 2,500 words, there are still 5 people that see my final product before it ever goes to print. Because I'm going to miss something. Like, my brain is just going to say, well, I know what that was supposed to say.
Mm-hmm.
Whoops, wrong button. Stick Death the RPG. There we go. Come on. There we go. I'm visualizing this. Is anyone familiar with Order of the Stick, the cartoon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, part of what made that work was because it was all stick figures. Okay, well, does anyone else have any final thoughts? Anything you think we missed on the indie department? I thought it was interesting because someone said that if you published your own books, you were not indie because that meant you had enough money you could afford to do that. And I was like, I think Troll Lord Games still counts as indie, and they definitely publish their own books.
And print on demand is free, no money up front. So,
Yeah. I did have someone on X say that it's very clear. If you've got a marketing budget of $1 million, then you're not indie. Anything under, you're indie. And, I had a chuckle. I replied with, most indies don't even have $1,000 to spend on marketing, let alone $1 million.
Professor Yarnwich would like to know if there can be a Deathbringer blanket so that she can buy one for her husband.
I'm gonna outsource that to Mrs. Professor Dungeon Master, who's in charge of T-shirts and merchandise. So I will tell her, people want a blanket.
Sleeping with Deathbringer just seems like an interesting tagline. Shoot, I started to say something else before I got distracted by that because I found it entertaining. Can't have been that important.
you asked for final thoughts, I think.
Yes, I did. I had a final thought. I just lost track of what my final thought was. So,
It's been replaced by goats.
let me tell you, I have been so low on sleep the last 10 days, and I have a couple of days to catch up, and then we get the next wave, which I think is going to be about 4 sheep and another goat. And of course, it'll all be at 3 a.m. So, but Grim did not have to take over because somebody's water broke, during this stream, which was my concern. Amazing Game Pro says, great stream. Thank you very much for your donation. It is greatly appreciated. Every little bit helps. Paying my internet bill so I can keep doing these is important to me. Last question. Do you guys consider games made wholesale by AI to be indie? What do you mean by wholesale?
Entirely.
Because-
It's
Yeah.
no.
You've got Corpse King, and he's used a lot of AI art, and I got a lot of respect. I consider him still an indie creator, and it opens up the whole AI art discussion, which is a very difficult, nuanced discussion. But if something is made completely out of AI, no, it's not indie, because you haven't independently created it. Some AI engine has.
Well, that's
AI engines
I was
can
trying to figure out if that
only
was what they actually meant. Like, so like the rules and everything are written by AI? Because AI would be terrible at something like that. I have had, because I'm a geek, I occasionally will have long conversations with AI engines just to see how they'll answer weird questions. They're not good at it. I can't imagine asking one to design a game system. Seems
So
strange.
I don't think it's quite capable of it yet, at least when it comes to role-playing games. I think it can spit out something acceptable for a card game or a board game, but I think it still needs a human hand to guide it and stitch it together. After Ryan Dancy made his comments that got him shit canned, I was curious, so I went round the different AI models with a card game I've been noodling with for a while, and tried it out to see if it could fix the problems that I've been having trying to make it work. And unfortunately, it could. And without being asked, it spat out some art for potential cards, which was pretty much exactly how I envisioned it. So whether that's a paucity of my imagination or something else going on there, but for mechanistic games, I think it can do it. But for something more wibbly wobbly, like RPGs tend to be, I don't think it's there yet. And it does tend. D&D has an enormous gravitational pull on most of these AI engines because they've scraped the internet, and D&D is the biggest presence. So when you ask it to do anything to do with role-playing games at all, it tends to swing gradually towards Dungeons and Dragons. So it's not. I don't think it's there yet.
Professor,
I also
you've had another vote for a Deathbringer blanket.
Oh, look at that.
So
Yeah, I
what
also
were you saying?
think that AI repurposes. It can only repurpose what it's had before. Dean and I've discussed this in the past. We pretty much think it's like Clue. It cannot create something brand new. It can just repurpose what has come before, and therefore you're never going to get anything that is truly original. Creativity is best in the hands of a human, in the minds of a human, and I always think that that's where it flourishes. And I can understand some very small, what I call the really small, the 85% of indie in TTRPG land are the tiny creators. And some of those will have to use things like indie arts. They just don't have any savings or anything they can plow into it. And I can understand that. But a whole game, no, would not be indie.
I have given some thought to doing a stream about AI art, but I feel like that might break my whole, I don't want to do something that's going to cause a fight. But I'm curious as to whether or not the chat would be interested and whether or not we think people could stay reasonable about it. But it is now 1:15, so we are going to start the wrap-up process here. I want to thank everyone on the panel and in the chat. This has been a wonderful conversation. I hope everybody else enjoyed it. I know everyone except maybe me is up well past their bedtime at this point, so I really appreciate you guys all being here. So let's do the clockwise thing again. And where are you going to be? Where can people find you? What have you got coming out? And what's coming up with you next? Professor?
Professor Dungeon Master on the Dungeon Craft YouTube channel, and you can go to deathbringer.com. Pre-sign up for the Kickstarter, which is going to be in late May.
Okay, and where can people find? Is it just on the Kickstarter page that's been going up that people can sign up, or is there another link?
Just go to the Kickstarter. Just go right to the Kickstarter. And I got a bunch of links to my Facebook group and Patreon and on YouTube.
Okay. We had this a little bit out of order, so I'll make sure that people get a good chance to look at the links. Simon and Eraser are now tag teaming since we have more people than usual on the panel. So, Vicky.
Hi, so we have a website, Evereye Games. We've also got a YouTube channel, Evereye Games, of which we do indie game spotlights. These are for small indies. So basically we do deep dives with them into their game design and their system design, so go check them out. And Dean will tell you all about what we're planning in the way of release of Untold Destiny.
Okay, so we have a Tuesday live stream where we go through some of the mechanics. We've taken our system Untold Destiny and we've actually split it into two, a basic and an advanced version. The version we've been playtesting has been the advanced version, but for some people I think it's too mechanically deep. And a basic system is a great way to get your teeth into it, get playing, and to understand the system before you move on to something that has a bit more depth, is a bit more advanced. So on Tuesday, we're doing character creation with a good friend of ours, Paladin Steve, and we are now gearing up to releasing our free adventure with rules on creating characters for first level, heading up to hopefully a Kickstarter around about October time.
Excellent. I was going to ask how far along you guys were with this, so.
It's, yeah, we're kind of 95% there, in that it's just editing. Really, we got a lot of editing to do. Strangely enough, I don't do editing. Vicky does my editing for me.
Yeah, and yeah, even then, sometimes some of it's a bit rewriting, lots of editing. It's like everything. We're doing everything ourselves, including learning how to do layouts.
Yeah, and it's that refinement process. You can get something out fast, but it's not going to look great. It's going to have a lot of problems, and we've been refining this now for probably 2 years. And yeah, we're now at the point I'm really happy with what we've got. We're at, I forget, it's the GWAC, isn't it? The Gaming Underground.
Underground.
Yeah, it's
with Dungeon Delver.
It's the Dungeon Delver one. So he hosted, yeah, and we're running a couple of sessions on there. So if anybody knows about the GWAC, have a look on there, sign up to one of the play sessions, and you can actually get your hands on and play a one shot.
Ooh. All right, Grim.
You can find me at post-mort.com or my YouTube channel, Postmortem Video. I also run games on an increasingly irregular basis on the Grim Streams channel, which is separate. I am currently about halfway through the third book of my spiritual successor to Bushido, called Stray Crows. So I don't know when that's going to be. Originally it was meant to be kickstarting around this time last year, but I've had some health issues and stuff. But hopefully at some point this year. Plus I have an off-brand Lamentations of the Flame Princess adventure hopefully coming out this week called Kingdom.
Okay. Well, thank you again all for being here. I am, of course, the Eclectic Goat. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Discord, and I have parted ways. But I am also on Instagram, though I am terrible about keeping that up. I want to thank Subtle Deviancy, who became a member to the channel. I want to thank Goofus for several donations, which I really appreciate. And I've lost the chat has jumped around on me again. No! Amazing Game Pro, who also made a donation. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. The chat seems to kind of come in waves. It's like it holds really still for like quite a bit, and then all of a sudden there's like 20 messages that just all show up at the same time. I want to thank Simon and Legatus and Eraser for modding. I really appreciate you guys for all the work that you do. And next week, I think we are talking zombie games. provided, again, nobody decides to go into labor, because I do think I have a goat due that day. So as long as everyone behaves, we'll be talking zombies next week. Tuesday through Friday, from 10 a.m. to noon, I will be doing my game streams. So tomorrow we are going to be doing Tainted Grail. So Ben, hello. I'm sorry I'm sorry we didn't get to say hello because you were lurking, but we are delighted that you were here. I would really, really, really appreciate it if you have not liked the stream, unless you hated us terribly. Please do so. It's really helpful to the channel. And if you have not subscribed, I saw we had a couple of new people in, so I hope you will also consider subscribing. And we have one final super chat. Discount Hagrid is terrible at selling his stuff. Check out Machinations of the Space Princess and Invaders. Grim has a fan.
I know Discount Hagrid. He's a completely separate person. He's the one who did the ride, the Warner Brothers ride and stuff. I know him. He's an actor.
All right, everyone have a wonderful night. There are many people that thought that joke was really good, though. So everyone have a wonderful night, and hopefully we will see you on the next one. Happy headbutting.
It's a fucking goat!
Eclectic Goats got videos of indie authors and cinema love. A passion for the weird and the strange. She's snappily dressed and only slightly deranged. Come and meet the Eclectic Goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd. Shows might be a little improper. We've got real zombie, fake whizzes the otter, pizza in one hoof, glass in the other, deciding which role-playing games we will cover. Come and meet the Eclectic Goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd. Got a thing for black and white screens, crappy horror with low budget scenes. Choose on the history, spits out the law. Time for another whiskey pour. Come and meet the Eclectic Goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the